Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts College Football Podcast, your ticket to all things college football. Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? Join us as we talk college football, from the national championship to college rivalries to bowl games to the Heisman Trophy to which conference is the best. We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Football Podcast on a Thursday today here. My name is Tom Dougherty, which means this is the college football edition of the GSMC Football Podcast on a Thursday. We had the day off yesterday for the 4th of July. Hope everybody had a great 4th, celebrating our nation's independence and our nation's birthday, of course. I hope we had all fun and safe with our fireworks and everything yesterday, as with the sky was definitely lit up above my house, as there were fireworks coming up from all over the place. In this county, it's legal, actually, safe and sane fireworks are legal, but then of course people always have to have those, have the big fireworks to one up everybody. Like, oh, I got the illegal fireworks from Nevada or Idaho, and we wanted to throw those up on 4th of July, which is cool. I mean, they're pretty fun, but we want to stay safe, everybody. As we now are another year away from more fireworks. Of course, maybe New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is another firework acceptable holiday. Yeah. But I hope everybody had a great 4th and ate a lot of hot dogs. I mean, you guys will never guess how many hot dogs we eat as a nation in the United States. Every 4th of July. There's 325 million people in this country. We eat 150 million hot dogs every single 4th of July. Or we did this year, at least. The last few they guess. I mean, it's not just Joey Chestnut over there eating. I think, what did he do yesterday at the hot dog eating contest? Like 40 something, or 60 something. I think 11 world championships for Joey Chestnut hot dog eating contest, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, this is a college football show. Tom, what are you talking about? I know that you gotta love your 4th of July. 4th of July is interesting because, I mean, there's only the one sport going in baseball. And baseball, obviously, they do wear their stars and stripes stuff. We see a lot of the stars and stripes stuff and the camo stuff come out in I think it's November or September when the NFL does. It's a salute to service month. The college football does the same kind of thing. But yeah, no, it's pretty cool seeing all the different red, white, and blue combinations out there. Everybody coming up with their coolest outfit and such. I mean, everybody's got to have their red, white, and blue stuff, whether it's a bandana or paint or a swimsuit, or it doesn't matter. Shirt. Everybody's like, oh, you can't wear the flag as a garment. I'm like, okay, wait till 4th of July. I think we'll be okay. All right, but back to football as we are closing in. I mean, 4th of July is another good marker because it means that we're under 2 months away from seeing people on the field, and we're actually close to a month away from seeing people on the field for training camp and for preseason NFL. But in the college rankings, we like to still talk about the best players in the league, and of course, we're going to go by position in this show, giving each position a segment to talk about the top players in the league. I know I've already cut this segment short, so we're actually going to start with this one with the quarterbacks, because there's a little. I mean, the running backs, receivers, we know who's out there, or maybe running backs and quarterbacks, we know who's out there. Receivers, maybe not so much. Tight ends, maybe not so much. But definitely guys out there who are some serious talents, as we wait and see who is going to be the next guys to be pulled up into the NFL. I know that last year we had, it wasn't the biggest wide receiver. Actually, we're going to start with wide receivers today because this is a shorter segment. Yeah, we'll start with wide receivers today because this is a shorter segment, and there's only a couple guys I want to get to here. I'm going to go probably a long time on Bryce Love when we get to that second segment today. But as far as receivers go, I mean, you had Christian Kirk go out. You had you definitely had a guy in DJ Moore who really was a shock for everybody, but was kind of a guy that when you watched his film, you're like, okay, yeah, wow, he can do some stuff on this field, and he's going to be talented, because that's definitely something you want to see out of a rookie, or as a player who's not even a rookie yet. But as far as guys in the college ranks now, we need to go. And there's a couple guys down. One guy's at Oklahoma. Remember, we had Marquise Brown at Oklahoma, Hollywood Brown down there. He was a guy with Baker Mayfield was making some serious plays. If you guys see that number 5 jersey on the Sooners field, you're going to know that's him. And this is the guy who, I mean, last year after he transferred from junior college, he went to the College of the Canyons. I think that's in California somewhere. But he went to. He went for 57 catches, over almost 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, yeah, he's listed at a small 160, but I mean, they're going to get that more bulk to his frame, trying to get him into that real slot receiver, because I mean, that's the short in stature kind of guy. He's going to be in that slot, and I know that he's, of course, the talk the talk, and he could walk the walk a little bit, but if he can bulk up a little bit more, he'll probably see himself pop into the top, I don't want to say top first round of the draft, but maybe the first few rounds of the draft, as the NFL definitely is starting to key on and become a little bit more friendly to these smaller receivers, because of the way the offense is going and the way the rules are trying to shape the game and everything. It's getting more in the speed game versus a power game, and this guy's like a Hollywood Brown is going to be a talent to definitely pay attention to. Another guy is AJ Brown at Ole Miss. He's kind of more of your prototypical guy. I know he was going to go play baseball. Actually, he was a 2016 draft pick of the Padres back there, but he's definitely been a guy who's not. I mean, still not the tall classic receiver you see, but he's still going to be another slot guy. Going to be good in zone. Going to find those soft spots in the coverage. I mean, that's what the big deal now is football. Everything is much more X's and O's. And back to where it's like, okay, we're just going to use our strength and use our physical ability to overpower you. But no, it's all about, all right, can we finesse ourselves, get more open, move across the grain, get the defense moving this way, go the other way, try and create mismatches on one-on-one matchups. Whether you're going to get a guy like AJ Brown matched up on a linebacker or a safety, he's going to burn him. I mean, it's going to be tough to defend a guy like that when he's got the quickness he's been able to do. I mean, this is a guy. He did struggle in games against LSU and Alabama, who have players. That's the thing. Who have players who can cover. They have linebackers who can cover. They have safeties who can come up and cover. So if that's going to be an issue for him, he needs to be able to get into that situation where he can beat a good defender, no matter if they're a linebacker, safety, or if they have a nickel corner come over to cover him. But I mean, this is a guy who's gotten good marks on route running. Has shown some promise in, like I said, finding soft spots in the zone, being able to turn around and uncovering in the over the middle, giving the quarterback a nice target to throw to. Because that's really what you want to do. You want to be able to give, catching the ball, getting open is one thing, but if you're going to give yourself a prop to something to actually rest on there as a good receiver, is giving your quarterback a good target. And yeah, I mean, quarterbacks, depending on how talented your quarterback is, Ole Miss, they lost Shea Patterson, so they don't have no Shea Patterson at Ole Miss. If he could throw somebody open, if he's good enough to do that, throwing a receiver open, great. But if he is not, I mean, you want to be able to turn around and give him a nice wide target to get that ball to, and that's something A.J. Brown should be able to do at Ole Miss. Another guy is Ohio State. We saw him a lot as he's definitely a speed. No, he's another one of these smaller speed back receivers. Paris Campbell at Ohio State. I mean, this is a guy who has been explosive, been able to be out of the backfield with his end around plays or some sort of jet sweep plays, but this is a guy who should be seeing most of the touches. He's a senior now, going to be obviously there's going to be 6 different guys looking for catches this season, but this is a guy who's probably going to be the number one, as he's going to be in the slot, getting those quick little hitters and little slant plays over the middle, little zig routes outside, getting yardage, kind of dink and dunk yardage for the Ohio State team. Is obviously going to have a first time quarterback. Whether it's going to be Myles Gaskins or it's going to be, or what's his name? Yeah. It's going to be in there as a guy, or to take over for that Ohio State job. Myles Gaskins is the running back for Washington. So that's not Dwayne Haskins. There you go. Dwayne Haskins is your quarterback for Ohio State, likely. But Paris Campbell, big guy. I mean, he's 6'2", 200 pounds. So I mean, he's got a little bit more size than the other two guys I just brought up. As he'll be definitely looking to get over the top. I mean, whether it's going to be more possession guys to see how strong his hands are, whether it's going to be more times inside the numbers kind of things. But like I said, big plays in jet sweeps, big plays in end arounds. But whether it's getting him and his speed going the opposite direction of the defense is going to be a key for the Buckeyes this season for sure. Another guy is N'Keal Harry from Arizona State. This is your classic big, tall receiver, 6'4", 213 pounds. I mean, this is a guy who's, like I said, outside receiver prototype when it comes to the size and ability for him. He's also been able to be a big target for the first 2 seasons at Arizona State. 140 catches, 13 touchdowns, great ball skills in the air. I mean, whether it's boxing out, like using his frame to get kind of, positioning when it's balls in the air kind of thing, which is a very, 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 very valuable thing to have in the NFL. That's kind of the plays. Like you have quarterbacks who can put a ball in a spot. Having a receiver who can kind of box out and create a space for him to catch the ball is definitely something that you've seen a lot in the NFL. You haven't seen as much in the college because of the size, but this is a guy who could do that, and he could definitely do that effectively in the NFL. And that's getting whether it's getting space in the red zone, whether it's getting space on the sideline, getting open over the top. It doesn't matter because when you look at some of these highlights of the best receivers in the league, it's them going and getting the ball. The receiver, you've heard Aaron Rodgers talk about it in the NFL. It's like, my favorite thing about a receiver is the fact that I can throw the ball up there for them, 50-50 balls, and let them go get the ball. Like, hang it up there, give them a chance to get underneath the ball and reach their hands up. And when you have a guy with long arms and good hands, then you can do that. I mean, when it's a guy who can use his timing to attack 50-50 balls, that's really a valuable thing. 50-50 balls are 50-50 for a reason, because they can go either way. And if you can turn that into a 70-30 ball where it's like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's over 50% chance that he's going to pull this thing down if it's there. I mean, obviously you can't, like, if its throw is not accurate, then that kind of goes out the window. But if it's there, if it's on target, then he's going to get it. Then that's something that's very, very valuable. You've seen what some of these guys can do. I don't want to compare it to, I don't want to compare because this is the best receiver we've seen in a long time, but Calvin Johnson, the guy was huge. Matt Stafford would just chuck the ball up in the air for him, and he'd pull it down. I mean, that's kind of how it worked. In Green Bay, you saw Brett Favre just chuck the ball up there. Donald Driver would pull it down. Aaron Rodgers, Greg Jennings, pull it down. Even sometimes Jordy Nelson would do the same thing. I mean, he's not the little tallest, but still, the ability for a receiver to have a quarterback to have trust in his receiver to be able to do that kind of thing is invaluable in the NFL. You saw what Peyton Manning was able to do with Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne back and then over in Denver with Demaryius Thomas. Same kind of thing. Floats the ball up there. Not very much power on the throw, more finesse on the throw. Tom Brady did the same thing with Randy Moss, and he does it with Gronk too. So you see it all over the NFL. And it definitely means for good stuff. And the last guy here, Deebo Samuel at South Carolina, is another guy to look at. And those other guys like obviously Hunter Renfrow, Amon Richards at Miami, the other guys. But these are the top 5 guys. As Deebo Samuel at South Carolina, I mean, obviously this is a guy who could be a running back probably, but he wants to catch. He does have the size and ability, has urgency, physicality as receiver, knowing to work back to the throw, be able to have good hands. Obviously, having good hands and having strong hands and for a receiver is invaluable and almost paramount, because you're going to be catching the ball in a lot of traffic. And there's definitely parts of the game where you are going to catch the ball and get absolutely blasted. I mean, it's football. It's not patty cake ball. It's football, and that you can get blasted in this sport very easily, especially on some of those plays over the middle. So for a guy who's been able to get out there, whether it's a finesse talent guy who's going to be long-limbed, I mean, this is a guy who's not really going to have that size or speed, but he's definitely a tough guy who's going to be able to finish plays get extra yardages. And I mean, receivers who can do that, possession receivers who can do that. You've seen an Anquan Bolden in the NFL. You've seen like a kind of like grinder. Same. I mean, Doug Baldwin a little bit too, where they're going to really go. They're going to try and get that first down. They're going to stretch every single yard they can to get where they want to go. So that's definitely something to talk about as a receiver. And college football is that you only can help your team if you're able to. I mean, don't fumble, but obviously try and get the first down as much as possible. All right, I'll wrap it up for this segment. We'll come back and talk about the running backs on the other side. And third segment, we'll do probably tight ends or quarterbacks, and then we'll do the last one. And as whatever's left in the last segment as it works out. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast on a Thursday today here. Special day on Thursday due to the holiday yesterday. Coming back as we're going to do some talk on the running backs around the nation here, as obviously Bryce Love is your number one guy. I mean, we'll talk about the number one guys all over. It's going to be basically Jonathan Taylor and Bryce Love. And Bryce Love, we talked about a little bit of comparison with him and Christian McCaffrey, and then also a little bit more with our buddy Saquon Barkley. Wow, I couldn't think of it. Yeah, Saquon Barkley over there in New York. I was looking at their college stats and just like, number of games, number of carries, number of yards over a certain amount of yards per carry, number and amount. So it's definitely an interesting thing to look at, and seeing that Bryce Love comes back for his senior year. He knows he has unfinished business at Stanford. They lose that game to SDSU. He misses a game last year due to injury. He is kind of hobbled during that Pac-12 championship game against a USC team, which killed them in the first half of the season. I mean, I think it was game 2. They beat them by 20, and then they come back and only lose, beat them by like 3 in the Pac-12 championship game. So Bryce definitely looking to avenge that loss and those losses. As I mean, Stanford's got a roster. They got a roster. They can win a bunch of games this year. They have a good quarterback. They have a serviceable quarterback in KJ Costello who can work the play action. They have a Heisman Trophy favorite and as a running back, and you got a very good offensive line as usual. And their defense is going to be fine as usual as well. I mean, they did lose a little bit with Justin Reed going, but you still have some talent back there. Meeks is back there as well, so you can definitely get some wins under your belt if you're Stanford. I mean, look at their schedule last year for this coming season. They're going to have a little bit of tests early, but there's no Rice game. It's going to be that SDSU game. It's going to be USC. It's going to be Notre Dame. Boom, boom, and then you're going to have to go into that Pac-12 schedule where you're going to have obviously Cal every year, and some other games to navigate through. So. There's not always, it's not always a big worry, but I mean, it's Pac-12 isn't a slouch. You're going to play some quality programs as well. But when you got Bryce Love, the top college running back in my mind in the league of the year this year for sure, is a guy who played under Christian McCaffrey, plays under David Shaw, who was with Christian McCaffrey. He's been with this team where I think a lot of their talent from running backs comes from their offensive line play, which has always been good, no matter who they got in there. Whether they're going to run the power, they can put 2 extra linemen in there, with that ogre package or whatever it may be, they're going to beat you up, basically. They're going to beat you down and beat you up. And no, Bryce Love has definitely been been a guy who is high on everybody's boards. He's going to be finding a home in the NFL quite easily next year. But this is a guy who still has work to be done, still has stuff that he wants to accomplish at Stanford. And whether it's getting through a season fully healthy, whether it's going to be getting that Heisman Trophy, having another breakout season. This guy who averaged 8.1 yards a carry last year. I mean, yeah, this is a kind of a no-brainer pick as a top guy because, yeah, he was under the radar when McCaffrey was there, but then also was kind of like, oh, who the heck is this kid? And when is he going to have the bulk of the carries here at Stanford? Well, he's going to have the bulk of the carries for the second year now. He wanted to have more than 1 year. He wanted to have the ability to show off what he can do. I mean, this is a guy who had 13 runs of 50 yards or more last season, and he did have that ankle injury for much of the year. So, I mean, what he can do on a bum ankle for most of the season is insane compared to, let's see what he can do. Hopefully healthy for the whole year this coming season, because if he could single-handedly win a bunch of games for Stanford. I mean, that may have been one of the reasons why he came back, because he knew he was hurt last year, and he knew that some of the games that they lost, they could have won quite easily if he was fully healthy and he was able to be in there on every play. I mean, this is a guy, remember, if you watch some of the highlights of these games, he wasn't in every play. He would come out, he'd get a run, he'd come back out, he'd get a run, he'd come back out. He missed 2 plays. It'd be like 1 play on, 2 plays off, 1 play on, 2 plays off. He would rarely have back-to-back plays. And, so it was kind of like working with the coaches, seeing however it's going to work for me this time. I'm just going to work with it as best as I can. I mean, this is obviously your leg, and you have to run on your leg. So when it has pain, obviously you don't want to force it. But yeah, this is a guy who was able to work through an injury and put up the numbers he did even with that injury. So even more impressive to see that, because that can only mean he gets better this year. I mean, you can only imagine. I mean, and not like he's like, oh, he was just a young kid, he's going to work up his way. No, he was hurt, did that numbers while hurt, and now he's not hurt. So let's see what he can do while he's not hurt. So, I mean, it's the difference. I mean, your ankles. I mean, it's your ankle. It's cutting ability, speed, explosiveness. I mean, just everything. It's really everything when it comes to running the football, and he's definitely had the ability to do that well, even without the with that ankle injury. You have to be able to come back from that, and then he's going to come back from it even stronger than before. I mean, this is a guy who I'm just so excited to see play this season. I'm just going to be hopefully they can get a Heisman Trophy figured out for a running back, and if it's going to be him again, if it's going to be a running back again, I know we haven't had one since Trent Richardson and Derrick Henry. Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry, not Trent Richardson. Oh man, no, Derrick Henry and Mark Ingram. Other than that, it's been all quarterbacks, and we're going to do quarterbacks in the next segment, but there's a couple other running backs in this country right now that they didn't want their names to get forgotten either. And one of them is Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin. We talked about Jonathan Taylor a bit last week as well, or earlier this week with looking at his stats as a running back there at Wisconsin. And this is a guy who is the same kind of thing. You don't really have a star quarterback at either of these schools. KJ Costello is not really a big star quarterback. You're going to know his name. Alex Honeybrook is definitely not a star quarterback at Wisconsin. He's almost kind of like, where can we find somebody else? No offense, Alex, but Jonathan Taylor's got to be the bell cow. He's got to be a horse for them next year, whether it's going to be catching on the backfield. That's one thing for both of these guys, Love and Taylor, that I think that whether it's going to be kind of a coach play calling situation or they don't really use a check down that much in college, these quarterbacks can run as well. There's a lot more quarterbacks can run out of the pocket as well, instead of using themselves as a check down kind of thing, as you don't see that as much in the NFL. So maybe more catches out of the backfield for these two guys are going to be something that we see, whether it's Jonathan Taylor or Bryce Love. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor is a guy who he's gonna be just fine. The problem is he's playing the Big Ten, and I mean the difference between the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Yeah, you're gonna have big players, but the defenses are going to be a little more nasty. I mean, you're gonna have Wisconsin's going to be their schedule this year isn't that tough, but it does a little bit tougher than last year. As you'd have to go. I mean, Bryce Love, the toughest defense he sees all year is maybe Notre Dame or a USC, or maybe this year a Washington. But I mean, Wisconsin, I know as much as they love playing the they love playing the Indianas and the Marylands and the Minnesotas, but they have to get through a couple more things this year. For some reason, I cannot remember their schedule off the top of my head, even though I looked at it a million times. But they have to play BYU, whose defense isn't like super nasty, but Iowa, Michigan on the road. So yeah, and Northwestern, and then Penn State on the road. So Penn State's defense and Michigan's defense are probably the two toughest defenses they play all year. Maybe Northwestern if they get some guys, but that's the difference between the Pac-12 and the Big 12 is that you have a little bit more beef on the defensive side, maybe a little bit more of the power. Defense, secondary, bigger players versus the Pac-12, a little more finesse, unless you're playing like a USC, of course, but just going off of the recruiting and how it works. Obviously, it's going to be kind of a defense where you might have a little more speed, which is probably just the way the game works. I mean, it's different. Honestly, the Pac-12 has had the tendency to be a little more offensive friendly versus the Big Ten being more defensive, grinded out kind of thing. It's not unless you're Ohio State, of course, or Saquon Barkley, but just kind of like the cultures have been like that, where obviously a lot more cold weather games, a lot more hot, warm weather games. I mean, California and Arizona and Nebraska and Utah and Colorado. I mean, maybe a little bit of cold wetness and coolness from your friends up there in Oregon and Washington. But in the Big Ten, it's Wisconsin and Nebraska and Minnesota and Michigan, and even Ohio can get cold up there, obviously, in Columbus, but in Iowa. So, I mean, you're going to have, in Evanston, Illinois, which is around the coast of Lake Michigan, like it's freezing cold there in the November and December and January. So, definitely not the easiest sledding, the Big Ten. But they have a guy, Jonathan Taylor, who had a good year last year, had the ability to show what he can do. I mean, this is a guy who's going to have all of his this is about Wisconsin's offensive line is going to be all back. Those are all guys who are going to be, some of them are going to be NFL prospects. This is going to be a scheme that's going to favor the run, more of a power scheme, and then Taylor is a guy who's going to be able to play right into that because he's not really a power back, but he's got the power to be able to get through tackles and has been able to show. This is a guy who broke the freshman rushing record with almost 2,000 yards rushing last year, which is pretty darn impressive coming out of a school like Wisconsin. Last year, looking at their schedule, 2,000 yards is not crazy knowing their schedule last year. Looking at the game by game stats as well with him, it's like, he had a couple big runs, and then obviously maybe games got on hand and you were able to pile on a couple more yards there at the end. But so Jonathan Taylor is the other guy. And then one more guy can't forget about is actually a very talented running back down at Oklahoma. That's Rodney Anderson down at Oklahoma, as he obviously was there with Baker Mayfield. But this is kind of the guy who is going to be working with Kyler Murray, whether it's going to be a situation where he's going to be back where he was with against Georgia. This guy who he ran 200 yards for 2 touchdowns against Georgia, and Georgia has a very good defense. They had NFL players all over that defense. Roquan Smith right in the middle of that defense. He's the first top 10 pick in the NFL. So it's the guy who ran right through that. And you can't knock out Rodney Anderson. He's a guy. He had 201 yards, 2 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl. He's got great power. He got hands and to be able to catch the ball in the backfield and acceleration, to be able to get away from those linebackers or safeties if it's going to be matched up against them. He's a mismatch kind of guy. And I've always been a fan of the Oklahoma running back. Obviously, we know the big one to come out of there, legendary running back to come out of Oklahoma, but whether it's going to be a guy who's going to have to play off Kyler Murray or be in a kind of nice little change of pace for him to get a breather, it's going to be whatever it's going to be. I think it's going to be another big weapon for him out of the backfield to catch the ball, as well as Lincoln Riley isn't afraid of doing that kind of play, throwing the running back out of the backfield. You don't see it as much in college as you do in the NFL, but Lincoln Riley trying to get more towards that pro style offense, and was going to have to deal with a very dynamic, mobile quarterback in Kyler Murray. But I mean, having Rodney Anderson is a nice little change of pace to be able to use that, and in your offense is paramount and valuable as well. So I mean, those are the top guys in college, according to me, and a lot of different people. I mean, this isn't. I'm just pulling these guys' names out of my head. These are guys who have been all over the talks for a long time. Whether it is Bryce Love, my Heisman hopeful, Rodney Anderson, or Jonathan Taylor, we're going to be in good hands this year on the running back side of it. So everybody stay tuned. We'll come back and do some quarterbacks on the other side, and then we'll sign it off with the last segment. We'll do some tight ends and then some various others, maybe some defensive guys as well. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition on a Thursday today here, special because we were off yesterday due to the holiday. So doing this show today is we're doing some quarterbacks in this segment now, the best quarterback in the nation. I mean, I've always been a Will Grier fan. I know he had to have little hiccups over there at Florida, as we'll start off with him in this segment. Obviously, there's a bunch of guys to get to in the quarterback side of it. We got, Kyler Murray. You got, obviously, Tua Tagovailoa. You got the Charlie Brewer over at Baylor. We got JT Daniels, maybe, if he's coming in, KJ Costello, Jake Browning. I mean, there's a lot of guys in the quarterback side of it too. Jay Patterson, we talked about him a lot. So who's going to be the number one guy, the top quarterback in the nation? Justin Herbert, Chase McSorley. I mean, these are all guys we haven't heard of, but Will Grier kind of has been the consensus as far as who will be the best in the league this year. There's other guys who we like to talk about as well with Tua, but this is a guy who had it. And Will Grier, coming back from an injury, is ranked number 2 nationally in touchdown passes, number 3 in passing yards. Is going to do great in this big offense that they have here at West Virginia. And Dana Holgorsen loves to throw the ball, and when you have a big quarterback like a Will Grier, you can do just that. I mean, I know with an injury, trying to come back from that can be a little bit interesting to work your way back, but I like what I've seen from him. You like him. I love him in the Big 12 because in the Big 12, I feel like he can only succeed because this is a guy who. This is the guy who has been able to go down and been able to, get over adversity. Obviously, you have to deal with some stuff over at Florida, but I mean, when you have to put stats up the way he's been able to do, you're just fine. I mean, you're just fine. Obviously, in the Big Ten, being able to do what he did is very good. So, looking at the year last year at West Virginia, he did start 11 games. 250 completions. Whether it was touchdowns, 34 touchdowns last year to only 12 interceptions. So you like that ratio as a quarterback guy. If you're following quarterbacks, you got to like that as well. So this is actually interesting. I didn't even know this. This is not even sports related, but it's also a kid. I don't know if it's affected him personally or whatever it is, but obviously he's had to deal with his own kind of stuff when he transferred from Florida. But this is also a kid who has had some family stuff get involved as well, where his brothers are now like social media famous or whatever it's called. But yeah, his brothers got like very, very popular on the Vine app before it went bye-bye. And then we're able to change that over to YouTube, as they always all did, and they were really main parts of that whole silly thing that got really popular a couple years ago. But yeah, those are actually his brothers. And I mean, that's I don't know if it's adversity or it's more eyeballs on you, or people actually figuring out, oh, they're related, oh my gosh, whether any of that. But there's so many variables in sports. Sports are all variables, and it can be hard to navigate through certain things. So I don't know whether it's a situation where he's going to have to deal with that. But I mean, I know he had a big deal with the whole with the PEDs stuff, sitting out his 1 year, and being able to come back this year is a big deal. And obviously having the 34 touchdowns is a pretty good number, 7th most in the nation, and getting the honors for the Big 12 newcomer of the year for the offensive side. So, I mean, I love him in the Big 12. Obviously, looking at the West Virginia schedule this year, when you have a big quarterback, you're able to, and big receivers, you can really push yourself down up the boards in the Big 12, because there's a lot of games to be had there. I know they have a big game to start off the season. You got to like the ability to schedule those other games those non-conference games that not everybody does. I mean, looking at their schedule for this coming season, I mean, yeah, you open up with Tennessee, non-conference. You should be able to handle Tennessee, even at home. I mean, in Tennessee, I mean, they have a new coach. That program is kind of in disarray. I mean, their defense has always been kind of porous, and if Will Grier can pick apart that defense, it'd be just fine. I mean, then you get into you have Youngstown State and NC State, so they actually have 2 different games against non-conference teams. NC State being in the ACC. That's another road game, so it's another one if they can get by that. So Daniel Holgerson's really set up this schedule, actually. That West Virginia set up their schedule actually to where they know they're in the Big 12, and if they can run the table, they'll have very, very good strength of schedule. They'll have 2 teams on there that aren't the best teams in their conference, but they're in Power 5 conferences. They're not cupcake schools. They're in Power 5 conferences, and that could definitely help their strength of schedule, because in the Big 12, you get a little bit of a ding for that, because you're playing at Kansas State, you're playing at Texas Tech, you're playing at Kansas, you're playing Iowa State's tough. But then Baylor, I know they had a big stretch in the middle of the season where they're playing, at the end of the season where they played Texas, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma. So, I mean, if you can that's the big stretch. If you can get that first half of the season done, no blemishes, you're going to have the full power of the ESPN machine behind you by the end of the year. And you're going to probably have a high ranking going into that Texas game. With 4 games to go, if you haven't lost a game yet, and if you can get by Texas, then you'll even have more hype, and it's just going to roll. That's actually kind of an interesting way that Texas, TCU, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, where they can knock off each boom, and then obviously 3 out of those 4 games are on the road. So those are all going to be, that's going to be a tough stretch, honestly. But if they have a quarterback like Will Grier, who's been able to put up the numbers that he can, I wouldn't worry about it one bit, because that's going to be an interesting way and a kind of a cool way to be able to get through your Big 12 schedule. And then also, the Oklahoma game is actually at home. So 2 of the 4 games are at home. So that's good. So Oklahoma is at home. So they can play that game and play that game in Morgantown and have a little more comfortableness with that. But, I mean, I know home and road kind of stuff, that it's like a 3-point swing kind of thing. I'm not that big. You see upsets all the time. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters a little bit in football, but it doesn't matter all that much. You see teams looping on the road. If you're a good team like this, I mean, West Virginia, you should be able to win on the road and then beat a good Oklahoma team at home. Because, I mean, that game at the end there could be, that game on the end there could be a rematch right after it, because they don't have conferences in the Big 12. They don't have divisions in the Big 12. They still have Big 12 championship game, but they don't have divisions. So I think it's just the top 2 teams play each other. So number 1 and number 2 play each other, right? So I don't know if they have divisions anymore, or yet in the Big 12. I know they added a Big 12 championship game, but I'm not sure if they have a division. So it could be a West Virginia versus undefeated West Virginia team against an undefeated Oklahoma team, possibly at the end of the year. And doesn't matter if they lose. Whoever loses, they're still going to play against each other in the Big 12 championship game, assuming there's not another undefeated team. I doubt it. And then the winner of that probably will get a chance to play in the college football playoff. So, because then they both have 1 loss if West Virginia was able to win. That would be interesting, though. Then you really go with those. Oh, hey, Tennessee and NC State games could be even bigger for the West Virginia team. So, looking at some of those other quarterbacks, now we talked about Will Grier and West Virginia a lot, but there's also, can't forget about Justin Herbert. We talked about Trace McSorley a little bit last show with Penn State, as he's going to be tested with no Saquon anymore, no security Saquon. But yeah, you're going to have a Trace McSorley guy who has gotten already the seal of approval from Saquon Barkley, who says you're never going to be out of the game when you have Trace McSorley. Obviously, winning last year on a walk-off touchdown is pretty nice, but this isn't the guy with the biggest arm. This isn't the guy with the biggest stature. This is a winner, and this is a guy who's been able to make clutch plays, and it can definitely perform in crunch time. So whether that's definitely a big deal in sports, and it's a big deal because it's a talent you can have as a player, and it's definitely something that's definitely valuable in professional sports, especially in the next level. But I know that intangibles are a great thing as compared to, like, you know, your actual height and weight. But you know, you gotta like what McSorley's doing, as he is up there at Penn State playing well. As far as another guy we haven't talked about, Justin Herbert at Oregon. Obviously, Oregon has had a history of some really, really good quarterbacks in their past, whether it's running the ball. Marcus Mariota comes to mind, obviously, but Justin Herbert's been able to get a guy who's got a really, really good arm, but also can run the ball really well. I know he only played eight games last year, had that collarbone injury, but this is a guy who averaged for almost 350 yards a game, 15 touchdowns. I mean, 34 touchdowns, 9 interceptions ratio over 16 career games. I mean, that's pretty nice right there. It means you're protecting the football, you're accurate with your throws, and you're not making bad throws either. So, Justin Herbert, looking at the Oregon schedule, I mean, for this season, the Pac-12, I mean, this coming season is a little different. You do start with Bowling Green. You have your easy. I mean, this is talking about. So it's weird. You look at the other side of this. West Virginia starts with 2 road games against 2 Pac-12 Power 5 schools. They're at Tennessee. They come home for some cupcake game, and then they go at NC State. This is Oregon's first 3 games. Home against Bowling Green. Home against Portland State. Home against San Jose State. That's not the hardest. I mean, I know they have a new coach and everything, but then they roll right into a home game against. They have 4 home games to start the season. 4 home games to start the season off, and then they go. So they're home against Stanford, and they go at Cal, home against Washington, at Washington State, at Arizona, home against Oregon. I mean, home against UCLA. So I mean, they do put their rivalry game at the bottom. They're going to be at Ohio State this year, but I mean, looking at their tough games is really going to be. They have Stanford at home. They don't play USC this year. They have UCLA at home. Oregon can win a bunch of games. They could win a bunch of games. They got the talent like Justin Herbert is. They play Washington. Their 2 toughest games this year are at home. They have Stanford at home and Washington at home. And Washington State isn't going to be what they were last year. So, yeah, their 2 toughest games are at home. That's a very favorable schedule. Oregon could be winning a bunch of games if they can get by Stanford. If they can get by Stanford to begin the season off at home after those 3 cupcake games, you could be seeing Oregon up in the top rankings for most of the season, especially with the talent they have. But they do have to win that Stanford game, and then obviously going to have the Washington game right after that Cal game. So no hiccups there either. So obviously Pac-12 play, you can easily slip up against Cal in Berkeley, so you never know what's going to happen with college. We can't wait. That game is the Cal game is September 29th. The Stanford game is September 22nd. So we're closing in, folks. We're under 3 months away. Well under 3 months away. We're almost 2.5 months away from seeing the first games of the year, which is going to be exciting because. I mean, obviously, the very first game is less than 2 months away. It's September 1st. So, I mean, we're less than 2 months away from that. So, we're going to be seeing a lot of fall practices. We're seeing these guys getting out there in their little pennies or whatever the practice uniforms are going to be. And we're going to see it all over ESPN and or however you get your sports knowledge. We'll be talking about it here a lot, as well as we've gone through the quarterbacks. We did Will Grier, Justin Herbert, Jason Sorley. Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa is a guy who could be up there very easily. We went through a bunch of quarterbacks at the beginning. Jake Browning. We don't want to forget about KJ Costello. I mean, you got Malik Rozier down at Miami. Obviously, Kelly Bryant at Clemson. We'll see if he can hold his job for the whole time. If you're not going to have a Trevor Lawrence knocking on the door behind you, kind of situation there. Kyler Murray at Oklahoma. So, I mean, there's lots of different guys. We have also the quarterback competitions we haven't even figured out yet. Texas has not named a quarterback. Texas A&M has not named a quarterback. I don't know if Oklahoma State has or not. But they have a couple guys who are very good up there at Stillwater. But then USC has not announced a quarterback yet either. So, and neither has UCLA. So, definitely have some things to figure out across the country, and we'll probably be figuring those out within the next month or so here with them when we get into the fall practice, as we like to do. And we'll be getting to that as soon as that stuff starts coming out. We start rolling out the top depth charts of this season for starting quarterbacks. We'll be here talking about it on the GSMC Football Podcast. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be right back with some talk on we'll probably go some tight ends and over some news from around college football as well. So we'll finish up that final segment with some bounce around stuff, some news and updates. All right, stay tuned.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Football Podcast, the college football edition on a Thursday today here, as we come to you on a Thursday due to the fact that we were off yesterday for 4th of July, as we've gone through some receivers, some tight ends, not tight ends yet, we're going to get there in just a second, but receivers, quarterbacks, and running backs as far as top guys in the league, in the country. As far as it goes for this coming season, we have a couple tight ends to talk about. Caleb Wilson's one of them. He's going to be a big top draft pick in the draft next year for the NFL, but he's from UCLA. He's a 6'4", 235-pound guy. 4.60 projected run time on the 40. I mean, this is a tight end. His measurables are pretty interesting. This is a guy who was big in that comeback last year for UCLA and for Josh Rosen when they came back against Texas A&M, and he's caught 15 passes, 218 yards in that game. As I mean, tight ends are very, very interesting in college because they can kind of get forgotten. It can be guys who are more blocking tight ends, and be guys who are really going to be valuable in the passing game, guys who might not get on the field because they don't really run with the tight end. But definitely some guys. I mean, it depends on what kind of offense, obviously, you're running in college. I mean, if it's going to be a pro-style offense, you're likely going to have a tight end. We've had some big tight ends come out where we have O.J. Howard, or it's going to be a Austin Hooper or a Zach Ertz. I mean, I know Stanford's a big the Pac-12 is honestly a lot of pro-style running, pro-style offenses in that conference. So you see a lot of tight ends come out of the Pac-12, a lot of tight ends come out of the Big Ten as well. Because of the type of offense that are run. Same thing maybe in the SEC, but like we said, Austin Hooper, Stanford, Zach Ertz, Stanford, Tyler Eifert, Notre Dame. I mean, these are all big schools that have big guys. I mean, you talk about big tight ends in the league. Obviously, Gronk, he went to a Pac-12 school, actually, Arizona. I mean, go through the list of tight ends, and you're going to find a lot of big blue blood schools where they're one of the better players. I mean, Jason Witten, Tennessee. I mean, I can keep going. Want me to keep going? I can keep going. As far as tight ends go, but yeah, George Kittle in the Niners, Iowa. I mean, he'll be a household name. I think he's gonna be a household name pretty soon. Vernon Davis went to Maryland. I mean, Jordan Reed. Actually, I don't know where Jordan Reed went to school. That's a flub on my part. But I mean, top guys. I mean, some of them go under the radar. Some of them are. I mean, they're obviously big humans, so they kind of are known already before they get drafted. They might be very good talents when it's a raw talent kind of position where you're gonna be able to use size as well. But I mean, I should have known. Jordan went to Florida. I should have known that. That's my fault. But I mean, thinking about other big tight ends. I mean, like I said, Zach Ertz, Tyler Eifert, OJ Howard. OJ Howard, he's actually a little baby. He went to Alabama. I mean, there you go, Alabama, right there, boom. So I mean, you get there's talent everywhere, but there's definitely, depending on the type of offense they run, you're going to find different talent everywhere. So I mean, as far as Caleb Wilson goes, yeah, you like UCLA. I don't know how he's going to be used out of the Chip Kelly offense, whether he's going to be more kept in for blocking or not. As far as other guys, Noah Fant, tight end, 6'5", 232 pounds, from Iowa. There you go, another Iowa guy. Tyler Petite from USC. I mean, there you go. As you get, this guy is not petite. He's 6'4", 250, as he's projected for early second round next year. But these are all top guys who, I mean, thinking about other tight ends in the league right now. I know that the Evan Ingram, actually, we're kind of getting into the Evan Ingram is kind of that interesting one where you're going to get into, I think he went to Texas A&M. Ole Miss, close enough. Ole Miss, where you're going to get into a situation where you're going to have this maybe a lot smaller tight ends. They can still block, but they can still get out there and run. They're fast enough. They can get the mismatches, because when you're mismatch against on those seam routes, especially when if you line up like a tight end, normally would, if you're not up on your feet, you're actually down in a 3-point stance on the end of the line. You can get kind of hidden, and then all of a sudden you pop out of your stance and you're running the seam route right at that safety, and he doesn't know what to do. And all of a sudden there's the ball, and it's coming right at the tight end, first down. I mean, it's such a lovely play. Those seam routes where the linebacker just lets you run right by him, and you have the room to go to a 15-yard gap in between the linebacker and the safety has got to make a decision. Am I going to drive on this ball? Because it's hard to drive on a ball sometimes when you have a 250-pound guy running at you, and he's going to turn around and use his body to block you out and catch the ball in front of you. So, I mean, that's kind of it's a very tough play to defend. So you have to definitely be careful of that. Another guy is CJ Conrad of Kentucky, 6'5", 245 pounds. Caught 16 passes last year for 286 yards, 4 touchdowns, as he did have an injury with the foot injury. But this is a guy who has been able to put some a good season together as well. He's got some upside in his years to come with his size and ability to grow into that frame, as well as Tyler Petite. I was going to go back talking about with Sam Darnold. This is a guy who was one of the big receiving options for Darnold. Obviously, Darnold being gone is going to be maybe a little bit of a hurt for Petite in his stats, but this is a guy who can definitely improve on his blocking technique, and become more of a well-rounded tight end there. As far as guys, like I said, Font is going to be more of your 3-down receiver guy. I mean, he's going to be able to sit in there to block and be stronger in the NFL with the frame that he has at 6'5", but to their Fant or Font. But this is a guy who's definitely got the ability to get up there in the NFL and be able to move around a lot in the passing game, as well as be there in the blocking and the running game as well. And that's the thing about tight ends. You have more than one. You have a lot of jobs. You can do half and half. You can stay in and block. Basically, you're going to go off for a pass, or you can chip. Basically, you're going to chip. While you're going to go off for your pass, you can chip that end and give your other. He's going to come around and be blocked by your left tackle, or he's going to be blocked by your running back. You have to give him a chance when you chip that guy. At least give him a little bit off of his line on his pass rush. So whether you're going to do that. So as far as the top guy, though, that's going to be Caleb Wilson. Definitely got to watch out for UCLA. They definitely have some talent on that offense. We'll see how he gets used, if he's got the speed. I mean, he's 4.69, protected 40 isn't bad. He's going to probably he might end up getting that up with the fact that he's going to be with Chip Kelly this year. Very high tempo offense, which is going to be a definite a definite help for a guy who I want to work on his speed a little bit, but he's already got some good quick twitch ability with the ability to run good routes, and is a nice after the catch threat, as he's able to separate from defenders down the field for sure because of his speed availability. It's definitely a help for that. All right, as we come to the end here of the show, as we in the final segment, we've gone through a couple different tight ends and running, and we've done quarterbacks. Talked about Jonathan Taylor. Talked about, Bryce Love. Obviously, we have all of our favorite quarterbacks we're going to be looking forward to seeing this year. But I know my picks have come out. I've kind of figured out who my top 4 is going to be, as far as Michigan kind of sneaking in there. But it depends on who wins the conference. I know in the Big 12. It's kind of out. It's up there. I know West Virginia and Oklahoma are probably going to be your favorites. They'll be the guys, those two teams in the top 25 as well. Because there'll be a couple teams in the Big 12 on the top 25, but those will be the top 2 teams. Looking at their schedules, looking at how the schedule ends, you can get back-to-back games between Oklahoma and West Virginia, depending on how their seasons go, and if they get down to that final game of the year in a situation where, if, like I said, West Virginia wins, they only have one loss, West Virginia wins, gives Oklahoma their first loss of the year, they could play against each other again in the Big 12 championship game very easily. So as far as it goes with the Big 12, that's something to look forward to. In the Big 10, you have Michigan, I think is just going to be great. Jay Patterson wasn't on my list. I didn't talk about it all that much, but he's going to be right there with the top guys. They've definitely got lots of talent on that team all over the place. We'll see how their defense is figured out this season. But when it comes to the Power 5 conferences, like I said, Big 10, probably like Ohio State, even though they have a new quarterback. I like Dwayne Haskins, love your Urban Meyer. So we'll take Ohio State. In the Pac-12, as much as I want to say Stanford, because of Bryce Love. Their schedule actually isn't the easiest schedule in the world, looking at how it's kind of goes through. Because they play in the same the thing is, they play in the same division, so it's either going to be Bryce Love or Jake Browning getting to that Pac-12 championship game, and it's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be obviously head-to-head, whoever wins that game. But so we'll take Stanford as champion for that one. But within SEC, I'll take Tua Tagovailoa. I think we'll get Alabama back to the championship game. They'll beat Auburn, get into the Pac-12. Basically, if you beat Auburn, that's a playing game for the SEC championship game, and then you're probably going to play a Georgia team who's just the same as last year with DeAndre Swift instead of Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. And then in the ACC, Clemson looking like they're the top 2 school in that conference again with their defense, how they've revamped it. And then, like I said, in the Big 12, it's going to come down. I don't know. Actually, I would say Oklahoma. I'm higher on West Virginia right now because of their quarterback play right now. So I'm liking West Virginia right now. So does that mean they're all going to get in the top 4? We don't know, because there's going to be some schools right there. Like I said, there could be a Oklahoma who has one loss and loses the Pac-12 championship game. Loses the Big 12 championship game and doesn't get in because of that. There could be an Ohio State that has one loss. There could be a Michigan that has one loss. It's all over the place. And obviously it depends who those losses are against. And I doubt we see a undefeated team this year, because there's just too much talent all around the country, especially for those big programs all over the place. There's talent everywhere. So as far as it goes in college, we have a few more weeks to get down to the first game. I know September 1st is going to be a lot of the opening week for a lot of teams. So we'll see that opening weekend with the Louisville Alabama game. We'll have a Washington and Auburn game. We'll have a Miami, and I think it's Miami. I know it's West Virginia, Virginia Tech and Florida State also play, and then Michigan, Notre Dame also play too. So we'll be on hand for all of those games here, previewing them and recapping them as well. So everybody have a good rest of your week. We'll be back on Monday for another edition of the college football edition of the football podcast here on the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm Tom Dougherty, and we'll see you on Monday. Talk to you later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gssmedia.com. GSMCpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.